Did you know that most diets fail not because of willpower, but because we ignore our hormones?
Yeah, I'm just not happy with my body.
Live fully, lose fat, and keep it off, all while enjoying.
Because many people are like, how can I eat more again and stay at the same weight? But it really does work.
Nothing is impossible. Did you know that most diets fail not because of willpower, but because we ignore our hormones, metabolism, and mindset? Today's guest, Lisa Franz, has cracked the code using evidence-based nutrition and training strategies to help people live fully, lose fat, and keep it off, all while enjoying life. Lisa, welcome to the Swagability Show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you and to the listeners about all things health, nutrition, mindset today. And I think we have a lot of topics lined up.
I think so. I think there could be a 2.0 in the future from our pre-discussions, but I'm excited at least to ask some of the questions that I'm sure my wife's going to want me to ask, and other questions that I'm curious about. So let's get into it. First of all, before we get into that, when a person comes to you, what do you focus on first when people are looking to transform their health and their body? For me, when people come to me for counseling, in my mind, I have in my head the first thing I'm going to ask them, where does it start for you when an individual, no matter whether they're in a chair or able-bodied, what's the first thing you start to look at?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think most of the time people guide you into that direction or the direction that's needed themselves. So I too have like introductory calls and sessions with people even before they sign up. So I get a good opportunity to just get a bit of an insight into who they are, what they struggle with. And there are some people that where the information flows very slowly and it's just like, yeah, I just want to lose weight. Okay, why is there a specific reason you want to lose weight? Yeah, I'm just not happy in my body. Okay, can you remember a time when you were happy in your body? Yeah, 15 years ago. So you have to pull a little bit more, and then it turns out that perhaps they're actually really unhappy with several aspects of their life, and they're stress eating because they're unsatisfied at work, or they are lonely, and that's why they're eating a tub of ice cream on the couch every single night. And other people, they're very data oriented, and they might have been tracking their food and exercising for the last 15 years, but somehow what they have always been doing is not working in the same way as it used to anymore. And then that often comes down more to like, okay, your hormones are changing, your stress levels are higher, and maybe we can take some blood work as well. And it's not quite as much down to their limiting beliefs, perhaps. So there's really a wide variety. And to be honest, I don't necessarily have um, let's say a cookie cutter approach to everybody. It's more just like I kind of let the person guide us into the direction that's most necessary to start off with. Because
Mhm.
if I had a 10-step program that I do with everybody, it
Right.
wouldn't work the same way with nobody really, since we're all so different.
I was reading your website, and most of us think when it comes down to either diet for being healthy or for having a great looking body, it's one or the other. But from what I understand, um, you help clients live a life they love while still managing to achieve a body they love or the health they love. It's not most mindset, like a man's mindset, is, oh, it's either one or the other. I'm going to have to work out every day and not eat anything of this ever again, or I can enjoy my life, but here's the consequences. For you, it's not an all in one way or the other. uh, it can be both.
At least in my opinion, that's how we should start think about food, and that's the only way that I think we can have food as something or view food as something that brings us joy and makes our life even better and not something that stresses out more. And I'll tell you why I truly believe that and want to teach that these days. And it's coming from like a personal place because I have always loved traveling. I like eating out. I like, being social, going to a birthday party or whatever. And at the same time, I mean, I like feeling good in my body. I like looking good in my body. I like working out also. But exactly as you're saying, I used to believe and think that those two things were in contradiction. So I'd put myself through horrible restrictive diets for some time, and then like overdid it on vacation, came back 5, 10, 15 pounds heavier, whatever, and then putting myself through the next horrible diet. And I vividly remember standing in this food court in Thailand on my honeymoon back in the day, and this was like over 10 years ago, and I started crying because I had just done a really hard workout and I was starving in the morning, and I was looking around, was looking for some breakfast to eat because I was getting hangry, and everything that I saw I quote unquote couldn't eat because I had put all these food rules upon myself. Like one thing was deep fried, so you can't have that. The next thing had sugar in it, so you can't have that. The other thing had carbs in it, so you can't have that. So I was just like, what? I can't experience and enjoy my vacation anymore. Like this is there has to be a different way. And I see that in my clients over and over, that we place these food rules upon ourselves, or that we look at food in like these periods of like, oh, I'm eating clean and now I'm doing this, and then I'm letting loose completely. And really, I have learned and found that what we really need to practice is, number one, moderation, not just when it comes to food, but in general, our approaches to life overall, but also like through education and just learning more things in a non-dogmatic way, in the sense of, okay, how much does my body actually need? What sort of percentage of protein, carbs, and fats actually works best in order to shape my body that I want to? And that way making smarter decisions. So for example, to my point of like, I was terrified of carbs. I seriously thought that even just the smallest piece of bread would make me fat. And then I learned that, well, technically, I mean, that's 20 grams of carbs maybe in the slice of bread. So that's about, let's just say about 100 calories with the little trace of protein and fats in there. Technically, it doesn't matter if I eat that bread or if I eat the 100 calories from vegetables. Sure, one thing is going to fill me up a little bit more, one thing has a little bit more micronutrients, and the other one is going to leave me a little bit hungrier, but I don't need to feel guilty for eating a specific food item. And truly, to me, that educational side has given me so much of what I call food freedom now, where I have removed that guilt, and I can enjoy things in moderation. So as long as I still make sure like 80-90% of what I'm eating comes from good quality foods that nourish my body, I don't need to beat myself up for eating 10-20% of fun foods or having a glass of alcohol if I chose to. And that honestly has given me so much. And I wanted, or still want, to pay that forward and show people like, hey, food should be enriching your life, should actually make you look forward to a social engagement without the fear afterwards of like, oh, I need to work that off again, or I already don't know what I should eat there because there's going to be so much food and it doesn't fit into my diet and all of that. So yeah, truly that's my mission. And I know as a fact from myself and from most of the clients that I have coached over the years, that you can have it both, and you can enjoy life and build your nutrition around your life, as opposed to putting your life completely on hold to work on your body and then going back to your life and having that horrible yo-yo cycle.
That must be a relief for so many listeners, myself included, to be able to have adjust that mindset and the way we think. Can you explain to me and to our listeners what is nutritional periodization and why it matters?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So what I mean by that, because I mean that's a big term. It essentially just means to have more of a strategy to your nutrition than just saying I'm going on a diet or I'm losing 10 kilos or something. That's usually as far as people think, and they don't really think about how long that should take, or maybe they do put some sort of deadline to that, but it's not necessarily based on logic, more based on desire. Like, I want to lose 20 kilos in 4 weeks. Very unrealistic. Yeah, and so that's the first aspect of it in terms of the duration there. But what's way more important is actually like people don't have a plan for how to get out of the diet and what's happening afterwards, because often we just look at it as a short-term thing, as we were just talking about, and then we don't think about, okay, what does that mean for me afterwards? How do I actually maintain that? Because I truly don't think my clients or myself are successful if we're not able to maintain that 3 years, 3 months, 13 years after that. Like, I want to see my clients being able to actually navigate their food for the rest of their lives with confidence, as opposed to just saying, oh, this is what my client looked like after 6 weeks. I don't care that she gained it back 6 weeks later. So that basically means when we finish a diet or weight loss phase, we want to think about how do we keep that off? And most of the time people make one or two mistakes. The first one being, we just go back to the previous ways of eating because we've reached our goal weight. So, I can eat normally again. And that is a terrible idea for several reasons. Number one, your body, physiologically speaking, is going to send you increased hunger signals. It actually wants you to put the weight back on, because any extra kind of cushion that you have is sort of a insurance policy for survival, and your body's only job really is to keep you alive. So if you listen to your intuition, to your body's cues, to, like, if you do intuitive eating, you're going to put the weight back on, and most of the time actually a little bit more. Again, your body just thinks like, hey, let's make sure this is not happening again. We're not going into this starvation period again. And let's add to that you are probably feeling a little bit deprived from all the things that you cut out or restricted yourself from over that period of time. So it's really important that we acknowledge that, and we just realize that the increased hunger signals we have after a diet are completely normal, to be expected, but we should not listen to our body in those instances. I'm normally very big advocate for, like, yes, we need to be in tune with our body. We should, respect the signals, but in this instance, no. And also even just that mindset in like, oh, I finished my diet, I'm going back to my previous ways of eating, means we haven't really addressed the underlying issues of like emotional eating, other habits, as in like food choices, habits as in just anything that's like a little bit deeper. The second mistake that I often see people make is that they reach their goal weight and they're so terrified of eating more again, because it's like, oh, you don't want to put any weight back on, that they just stay at this really low calorie level for months and years, and basically quote unquote damage, or at least like don't do anything good for their metabolism, because what used to be your weight loss calories now has become sort of a maintenance. So next time, if you want to lose a little bit more weight, you need to eat even less. You need to eat even less, even less, even less, even less. And at some point, and I hear that especially from many women kind of going through the menopause transition, where we're also dealing with hormonal issues, whether like, I'm eating so little, I'm eating like 1,200 calories and nothing is happening. I used to do this in the past and it was working, and now like it's just not working anymore. What am I doing wrong? And that's often because we haven't restored that metabolic and hormonal health. So what I usually teach my clients to counteract those two things or prevent those two things from happening is we need to come up with that nutritional strategy, or what we call a reverse diet, where we're slowly and gradually increasing the calories again. And by doing that slowly and gradually, we're teaching your metabolism to burn more again. It's kind of like when you go on a diet, you unplug your, let's say you're a laptop, you unplug your laptop, you go into a dieting phase. At first, everything is working like completely normal. After a little while, the dim switch comes on. It doesn't do all the backup processes as nicely. And that's sort of what happens with our metabolism after a while of dieting. So when you plug it back in, when you eat slowly more food again, it's not like suddenly everything works properly again. It takes some time to recharge. And that's exactly how we want to approach that in terms of metabolism. We want to teach it slowly and gradually to burn more again. You burn more even just from fidgeting and everything like that. You become more active again, because many people are like, how can I eat more again and stay at the same weight? But it really does work as long as you are doing it slowly and strategically. And so once we bring those calories slowly back up again and we reach that maintenance place, that's a point where we then can transition into intuitive eating and when we can get a little bit more relaxed again. But yeah, most people unfortunately don't think as far as that. And that's why I'm so big on, yeah, quote unquote, periodizing your nutrition, because I think that that's a very big missing part.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Right. So much to unpack there. Yeah. Speaking of strategies, what or how do you approach individuals, say like myself, that have sustained a spinal cord injury, 30 years ago at age 19? Obviously younger, metabolism worked better there. Plus I lost a lot of muscle mass after the accident. Once things stabilize and then you start putting on weight, are there strategies that can be adapted for individuals that have an illness or injury, that are in just in a different life period with differing abilities than what they used to have?
Yeah, absolutely. And you are touching on a few or several very good points there as well. Of course, if possible, we do still try to work around the injury in whatever way is possible. Let's just say doing some strength exercises for the upper body or core strength is also really, really important. And exactly as you mentioned, it's not so much for the energy expenditure while you're exercising. It's really much more in order to preserve that muscle mass, which is a much more metabolically expensive tissue than fat mass. So meaning at rest, it burns more than fat mass. Nonetheless, I have even had like able-bodied clients that were just saying like, I don't want to exercise. I hate exercising. I don't have the time. I just don't enjoy it. Can I still lose weight even while being pretty much completely sedentary, maybe getting in 1,000 steps or so per day? And yes, it's absolutely possible. And so the reason for that is our metabolism is comprised of much more than just energy expenditure. Sometimes, again, I hear that often. It's like I need that feeling of I need to earn the food that I'm eating. I need to burn it off from somewhere. It needs to come from somewhere. And yes, energy expenditure through activity is helpful, but it's not required. So in the sense that when we think of metabolism, we have our basal metabolic rate. That is literally the amount of calories that your body burns, not just at rest, but it's like if you were laying in a bed, literally doing absolutely nothing, not even lifting an arm to eat or whatever, you're just lying there. That's about 60, it depends on how active the person is, but about 60% of the total daily energy expenditure, roughly. So even if you did nothing, your body deserves to be fed. Then on top of that, we have something that's called the thermic effect of food. So that means the calories that your body actually burns in order to process, to break down food. And that's not a ton, but it's about, of course, again, it depends on how much you're eating, but it's about 5 to 10% of your total daily energy expenditure. And there's a little nuance to that, which I always think is really helpful too. Because if we're breaking down, if your body has to break down more protein and more trying to break down more fiber, saying trying because fiber technically can't be broken down, but if we're eating more protein and fiber, your thermic effect of food, so the energy that you need even just for digesting, is higher. So if someone is looking for a little quote unquote hack to improve or to be able to eat more protein, eat more vegetables, your body's automatically going to burn more. And maybe someone has experienced that where they went to a big barbecue and it was a ton of meat or protein sources, and after that you kind of get the protein sweats, is often what I have heard it called. And that is because your body's like so busy breaking down the protein. So one of the many reasons why we want to eat more protein. So yeah, that's another small aspect of your metabolism. Then on top of that, we have what is called the non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So that is all kinds of movement that you're doing unconsciously or sort of unintentionally. Let's just say like you're nodding along here as we're talking.
Yeah.
That burns maybe not a ton, but it burns some calories. You're blinking. I'm gesturing around here. I'm trying to sit up tall in my chair. All this stuff still burns calories. So the little things often get not enough attention, like even just like trying to sit up straighter or have a better posture, like that matters when we're all adding it up. And again, it depends on how much that or how active the person really is. There's a huge variability there, or even, sometimes people going up and down the stairs because they live somewhere different, or if you're someone who's cleaning obsessed and you're moving around that way, can make up to like 10 to 15% of your metabolism as well. And then for most people, that remaining percentage is allotted to exercise. So it's really not that
wrestling with spam calls, phishing emails, or annoying scam texts. It's happening because your private information is being sold across the web. PCmatic DList offers a free exposure scan showing which data brokers and people search sites are selling your data. Then, with a basic upgrade, PCmatic DList completes the opt-out process to get your private information delisted. Stop the annoyance and safeguard your private information now. Visit www.pcmatic.com today.
Exercise, especially, let's just say strength training, or if you play 45 minutes of table tennis or so, it will burn some calories, but it's not like the main aspect. So yes, if you are completely sedentary, you're still able to lose weight. You just don't have as many calories to play with, because in the end, weight loss or weight gain always comes down to, are we eating more than what our body is using in the course of a day, or are we eating less than that? So yeah.
And does that formula change per person? Like, is it based on age, height, weight, the amount of energy or activity a person does in a day, or is there like some sort of math formula?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we calculate specific caloric needs for a person, that is calculated by using the age, gender as well, height, and the activity level is sort of like the last point. So we first determine what's basal metabolic rate according to age, height, and current weight, and then multiplying that kind of with an activity factor. So of course, if you're completely sedentary, there's not going to be much multiplied. Usually it's like 1.1. If we're very active, we're multiplying that with like 1.6. So it very much depends. But you mentioned earlier, as we age, kind of metabolic rate going down a little bit, and that is partially true. So it is true to the extent that, yes, from the point that we're like 30, 40 onwards, we do see a decline in total daily energy expenditure. So how much we can eat in order to maintain weight. But most of the time, it really does come more down to loss of muscle mass throughout from that point onwards, because we're getting busier, we're having kids, we're more focused on work, we're just not making the same amount of effort as when we were like in our 20s, or as a teenager, and moving around all the time without any care, and because of that decline in muscle mass, that's really more of the source of like declined metabolic rate as we age. But it's really not as much as people would think. So on average, they say it's about 1% per decade. So it's really not a ton, because often we attribute that. And I mean that that's actually like an interesting thing to talk about as well, because I think we often hear these sorts of things of like, oh, I'm going through the menopause transition, I can't lose weight, or well, I'm 50 now, is no wonder that I'm putting on 5 pounds a year, and because it's my metabolism is getting slower. And while there is often like a tiny bit of truth to some of these statements, I think just using that often as a label or something to hide behind is more the source of the culprit and becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And like, I'll put my hand up here because I like everybody else have limiting beliefs when it comes to many things. It might be finances, it might be relationships, it might be anything where or like, I'll give you a tangible example. It might not come across that way, but off camera, I'm actually more of like an introverted person. So I can switch on when I'm coaching, when I'm recording a podcast. I love being bubbly and, communicating that way. But I love my quiet time. I love being alone. And so for a long time, or quite often, when like a social invite comes along also, and it's at a later hour, I'm like, I don't want to go. There's too many people. I'm an introvert. I won't make the effort. And I have stopped using that label of like, I'm an introvert, because automatically you're like preventing yourself from having a great extroverted experience just because I'm like hiding behind that. So yes, there is some truth to that. I like being alone. I'm not comfortable in big group settings, but I don't need to say that I'm an introvert. And likewise, if you're going through the menopause transition, it might be true that you are having more hormonal disturbances, but just saying like, I can't lose weight because I'm going through menopause becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where you're just not putting in the same amount of effort as if you truly believed you can change something through that time as well.
So you have no doubt in your mind that based on a person's situation, mobility, age, calorie intake, in your mind, it doesn't matter. You could see anyone lose weight if they had the mindset to sticking with or retraining their body to live a certain way. You don't doubt that at all.
Not at all. No, not at all.
It's
Absolutely.
amazing.
And I mean, not just from my coaching experience, but like truly some studies that probably nowadays would never be admitted again. Like there were some observations or some studies done on people. Basically, they were not wanting to go, like it was more or less like a work camp, but like it's not a concentration camp, but a work camp. So these people were put on like 1,200 calorie diets, and that was men exclusively. So most men probably have at least double those caloric needs, and every single one of them throughout the 12 weeks lost a significant amount of weight, and many of them continued the study for an entire half a year and pretty much looked like skeletons at the end of it. Again, like this is very unethical and would never be replicated nowadays. But just showing that most of the time, like if we think we're metabolically resistant or whatever, studies are very clear that we're very terrible at grasping how much we're actually eating in terms of calories. We might forget the creamer that we put into our coffee. We might forget the dressing that's on our salad, but it's actually super creamy dressing, the croutons that were on there, the extra little licks and bites that we take from our kids' school lunches. And so again, like there was a study where on average, women who reported they were weight loss resistant, they on average recorded a calorie intake of 1,200, and they were put in a metabolic ward. That means like very tightly controlled in a setting where basically the investigators or researchers can measure how much you're truly eating. And on average, the calorie consumption was 2,500, so more than double. And likewise, we're terrible at overestimating our energy expenditure on in general, because also nowadays we have these fancy smartwatches, and your smartwatch might tell you just burned 1,000 calories in your HIIT training, and that is super, super, super inaccurate. It might be 400, but it's most certainly not 1,000. Like you can work out as hard as you want, it's very unlikely to be 1,000. And so we think, I've expended 1,000 calories here on this workout, when it truly was like less than half of that. And so in terms of weight loss and calorie expenditure, I have absolutely no doubt that if we truly get a grasp of all these things, And of course, ideally also address micronutrient deficiencies and hormones and sleep and stress management along the way, we can see success with everybody, because oftentimes it's not that stress and cortisol make weight loss impossible, but it makes it a lot harder. It's kind of like driving a car with the handbrake on the whole time, and you just feel like you're spinning your wheels in circles. So yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Stouffer's. Here comes 3-time juggling champion Natalia Rogers. She's juggling law school, her TA job. Oh, narrowly catches the laundry. What's that fourth ball? Parents unexpectedly showed up at dinner time? Is that too much for Natalia? Not with Stouffer's Chicken Alfredo and its mouth-watering mix of Asiago, Romano, and Parmesan. When you're juggling 4 things at once and the clock strikes dinner, think Stouffer's.
Friends, if you're enjoying episodes, we want to thank Podmatch for supporting us and being the sponsor of this episode. Podmatch is an amazing platform that connects podcast hosts with their expert guests like Lisa, making it easy to find the perfect fit for your show. If you're a host looking for a compelling guest, or if you have a story that you want to tell and are looking to get it out, Podmatch is the place to go. You can check out my affiliate link at joinpodmatch.com/swagability. That's joinpodmatch.com/swagability. And we thank them for their support. Let's do a hypothetical, if we could. How would you look at someone like myself in a wheelchair and develop a program, or maybe program's a bad word, maybe switching a lifestyle? What sorts, I know we talked a bit about earlier, but what would training look like? And yeah, but I'm thinking especially people have chronic illnesses or things like that, where training might be a small part of it. If you don't like the word program, what might a day look like for an individual that would be wondering, could I really lose weight with my body I'm now stuck with after an accident or that? Is it possible?
Yeah, so of course it very much depends on how
Sure.
active the person can still be. In an ideal world, let's say we would still include something like, the ergometer, where you can just use your arms instead of
Absolutely.
cycling, something like that. Some core stability exercises. It doesn't need to be a lot, like even if it's 10 to 20 minutes per day sort of thing. Even just for, better posture as you are sitting all day long, or making sure that we're not becoming more and more hunched forward, as most of us, whether able-bodied or not, are becoming anyway. So I would still certainly include that. As far as diet, I would certainly recommend reasonably, not necessarily high protein diet, but in general, a diet that is based mostly on protein and vegetables. And yes, of course, we don't want to exclude carbs and fats completely. Again, I'm definitely not someone who recommends any complete restriction of things. But as much like in your case, let me give you an example for a picture perfect day when it comes to food. For instance, especially when we first chatted before recording this episode today, you mentioned that during the day you're often very busy and kind of like time gets away from you. You don't necessarily want to actually have a full meal until you then finish your work day, and you suddenly want to relax and you want to eat it all. And that's not uncommon with anybody, really. But I would say, like, even if you're not necessarily feeling super hungry in the morning, having something like a protein shake or a smoothie is really good, because it also helps us prevent those higher cravings later on. And to my earlier point of protein does have a high thermic effect of food, meaning while it doesn't necessarily like spark your metabolism, your body does need some energy to break it down. So even just by putting that into your stomach, you are kind of like igniting your metabolism a little bit for the day. And I'm not saying you need to have breakfast at like 6 a.m. This can be at 11 or like whenever suits the person. But I would say start off with that, as opposed to having something like a muffin first thing in the morning or sugary cereal or anything. Like how we break our fast in the morning is really quite important for how we're setting up our blood sugar levels for the rest of the day. So yeah, I would start with a protein shake or a smoothie, maybe a smoothie like where you have protein powder or low-fat Greek yogurt and some berries and some spinach and some other like micronutrient dense food in there. And then after that, maybe your, morning coffee or so. Most people have the coffee first. Again, we kind of want to put the nutrients into our body as we begin the day. And for lunch, ideally, also in order to keep that mental clarity for the rest of the day, when you have great podcast recording like ours right now, and where you want to avoid that afternoon 3 o'clock crash where you're just need something sugary. It's again, would be very feasible to have a meal higher in protein and vegetables and not super processed for lunch. So if we have a big plate of carbs, let's say like just pasta with a creamy sauce, you're definitely going to get that crash in the afternoon. Also, if you're just fighting through lunch, not actually making time to eat anything, you're also going to get that crash in the afternoon. And probably that's when you are reaching for the coffee and sweet, because that's the quickest pick me up, but unfortunately also followed with the biggest crash. So if you can have something like, like roasted vegetables or a salad with some chicken, or if you don't like meat, it can be some eggs with vegetables. That's a much better way, or even make it into a wrap, and making sure it's not a huge meal that doesn't necessarily weigh you down, because yes, digesting does take energy, so you can't put so much focus and emphasis on your mental performance, so to speak. So that should keep you through to the afternoon. And again, when you have that just kind of craving to carry you through to the evening, and where you want to avoid to have those afternoon cravings or evening cravings even more, would be to have a light afternoon snack, but something like low-fat cottage cheese or Greek yogurt with some berries. Maybe you can mix in a little bit of almond butter. It can be, if you're really like on the go, can be a protein bar, but just something. Again, the protein here in this meal will keep you more satiated for dinner, so that you don't finish your workday and then you want to eat everything that's in the refrigerator or that's in your cupboard. So I see that quite often, where we feel like we need to force ourselves to go from lunch to dinner without anything other than maybe coffee. And then the hunger in the evening is just way, way, way higher. And not just that, it's also the cravings are higher. So my goal is always, I want to get you through the day performing as best as possible, feeling as best as possible, still being able to enjoy a nice dinner, but not to that feeling of where your primal instincts are just taking over and you feel like you have absolutely zero control over what's going in your mouth, actually. So yeah, that would be like the afternoon. And then in your dinner, yes, we can relax, so we can include some more carby things in there, maybe like sweet potatoes or rice if you like. It can be a tortilla, what kind of whatever carb source you enjoy, also with some protein and vegetables in there, maybe some fish, maybe salmon or steak or whatever people enjoy. And again, I also work with plant-based people, so those could also be sources like tofu or seitan, but some sort of protein. And you can enjoy some kind of after dinner snack if you really wanted to, like a couple of pieces of dark chocolate, maybe a nice cup of tea to help you relax as well. But yeah, in the evening, that tends to be the hardest time for most people. Most of the time, it is very much stress related, but it is also often related just not having had enough to eat over the day. But we want to address both. So simply by making sure we have had enough protein and vegetables throughout the day, we're at least eliminating that being a factor for the overeating in the evening. And then we can go and address the stress factor of like, hey, do you have any routines of like down regulating between your workday and between like your relaxation time? Because especially as people that work from home, there's often like zero transition time. Your transition time might just be like opening one door and closing the next, but you don't have that drive home from work where you can let your mind go a little bit. So I do often encourage people to either include like a little meditation between work and relaxation, or going for a walk, or even just like just maybe like I call it brain dumping, where you just write out what happened in the day and maybe your targets for the next day, and then closing your laptop literally and mentally as well, and be like, okay, I'm starting to enter my relaxation time now. I can calm down and be present with my family. And I think those practices, they go much further than most people think.
Much more of a holistic approach, body, mind, and soul, taking all three into account. What about pain? And are there foods or well, I guess vegetables or foods or whatever? Are there foods that can help deal with chronic pain? I've heard it mentioned before at chiropractors' offices and things like that, but I've never talked to anyone that's ever, trained and educated and has over 300 successful clients before. So, I'd just be curious about your take on foods and inflammation, things like that.
Yeah, I won't pretend that there's like a super food or a magic food that takes away any chronic pain, but exactly to your point, often it is very much also inflammation related, or at least let's say inflammation makes things worse, right? Like any inflammation is not going to make us feel any better, it definitely won't help the pain. So overall, of course, more whole foods, and by whole foods, I just generally mean less processing, the better, like single ingredient foods, things that maybe don't come in a package, or if they come in a package, there's just one or two things on the ingredient list, like rice or oats or anything, like that. Those are always going to be less inflammatory for the body than when we have 20 different ingredients and 10 of them you can't even pronounce, and there's sugar and refined oils and so on. Again, I don't want to fearmonger, but if we think of it as in like the 80-20% rule, I think that can always work well when we're like 80% will come from that good quality food, and 10-20% for a little bit more wiggle room. But yeah, generally speaking, as you mentioned, certainly vegetables, specifically like dark leafy greens, broccoli and cauliflower, those kind of like cruciferous vegetables, they're very helpful for detoxification, and that helps with the inflammation as well. But of course, also things like salmon, so fatty fish, mackerel, that kind of stuff. If people don't like fish, then they can supplement with omega-3, for example. Things like sweet potatoes, they also have some anti-inflammatory functions. Something that I'm a big fan of is like berries, any kind of berries, especially the darker ones like blueberries, blackberries. They contain a lot of antioxidants, and that basically just means they fight inflammation. So yeah, if we do want to orient ourselves a bit towards those whole foods, I always thinking of what can I add is much more helpful than thinking of like, what should I not have? What do I need to cut out? Because there we're talking about like, what internal language are we using? Right. And we're automatically going into the negative space. So the people that talk about their quote unquote diets in the way of like, no, I can't have that. No, losing weight is so hard. They're going to have a hard time. And that's automatically like laden negatively. Whereas if you change that to, yeah. Whereas if you change that to like, I've decided to take better care of myself. I don't have that. I choose not to have that at the moment, or I really enjoy eating in a way that makes me feel lighter. So that's a very different approach to it, even though you're technically saying the same things. And so therefore I encourage people to think like, where can I add more vegetables? Where can I add more protein, as opposed to, I'm forbidden of anything that's sugary. The point where I do encourage people to be a little bit more aggressive maybe is when it comes to alcohol, just because there really is not that much good that comes from it, whether mentally or physiologically. It is a toxin for the body. So again, I don't necessarily think we need to be like completely dogmatic about it, but it is the habitual things. Like what I don't want to see is like every evening, just in order to relax or to go to sleep, I have my nightly glass of wine or beer. That's where my red lights go on. If someone's like, well, when people have a birthday or once a month or even every second week on date night, I have a glass or two, that's a different story, because we're also drinking socially, we're drinking with people around, we're celebrating it, we're not looking at it as something that we need to like basically sedate ourselves. So yeah, on that point, I would say if you're using alcohol, or if you are having alcohol habitually, I would try to address that, and simply thinking of ways like, how can I substitute that? Because in my opinion, it's very unrealistic to just like cut habits out completely. But if we think about, okay, I do enjoy my glass of wine, could I change that for a non-caloric fizzy drink instead, perhaps, or for kombucha, or maybe a mocktail even, or something like that, and still feel like I'm getting some kind of like
Yeah.
down regulation. Yeah, like we just need to be creative and think of alternatives.
For the person that's sitting there listening to this right now, that has some sort of mobility impairment, what are just three? I know there's probably lots. What would be three things that they could take away from today to start right away? Obviously, there's much more that might need to be done, but that would come to your mind that be the first three things that you would say to someone like myself, or someone that like me that doesn't think they can lose weight just because of how sedentary I am. Can you think of three things that you'd say start this week?
Yeah, 100%. And I love it that you're stripping it back down, because simplicity is the best way to get going and to build habits. So those
Yes.
three things would be, how can I include more protein and vegetables in my meals, on ideally in every meal? Because automatically that's going to mean you eat less of the other stuff. Number two would be, how can I include some strength training in whatever way, shape, or form that might be? It might be some isometric holds. It might be, upper body movement and using some resistant bands or whatever. And even just like small things like 5 minutes a day, or before you hop under the shower or into bed, like doing something where you feel like, okay, I've used my body as best as I can even. And then number three would be double checking the mindset, because yeah, as you said, sometimes we get easily caught in beliefs of like, I can't, it's not possible for me, or I've seen the scale go up over the last 10 years. I have literally no evidence that this is possible for me, but believing that it is possible for you. And that's part of my mission overall too, that like, I don't want people to settle for mediocrity or just for what they consider as normal, because normal nowadays, unfortunately, is way below optimal. Nowadays, it is normal to be obese, to be prone to various diseases, to be, losing quality in life like very rapidly. And so I think we all deserve to strive higher, and we deserve to live a life that we love, in a body that we love, as you mentioned earlier. And so that all starts with mindset.
What are some of the most common misconceptions about metabolism and fat loss or weight loss that come to mind?
I think one of them definitely is that metabolism can be broken, in the sense of like, yeah, it doesn't work for me, or I've tried everything. If you would have tried everything, you would have found something that would have worked. So like metabolism doesn't break, even if we do years of horrible dieting, and are unkind to our body, but we can always restore that metabolic health. Metabolisms adapt, they don't break, so we can also get them adapted to something positive, to functioning better. Another common belief definitely is also kind of like you said, like I need to have exercise, otherwise I can't, like exercise is the best way to lose weight.
Right.
It is very difficult to burn, as I mentioned earlier, to burn like 1,000 calories through exercise. It takes a long time, but it takes maybe a minute to eat 1,000 calories if you really wanted to. Like, okay, if you eat slowly, it might take 15 or 30 minutes, but you can put a Dairy Queen shake with a ton of calories in front of yourself and down that within in a couple of minutes easily. So we cannot outwork a bad diet. Nutrition does make up for a bigger percentage. I think those are two big ones. And I guess I'll give you a third one. Just a misconception is how important, or people underestimate how important sleep and like stress management is in this whole thing, because sometimes we think, oh well, I can sleep when I'm dead, or it doesn't matter that my hormones are all out of whack. And it does play a role there. Like, even though I'm saying that technically speaking, calories in and out is the most important thing, we can do a lot with stress management, even just because it affects our eating habits.
I think as we wrap this up, I have some rapid fire questions for you.
Great.
All right. Is it ever too late to start strength training?
Absolutely not. No.
At any stage, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Training frequency, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. Is there a prime number that's best?
No, it really comes down to what's suitable for the individual. And as I said, like 5 minutes a day, every day is better than none at all. So most of the time, something is better than nothing.
How to balance rest and intensity?
That's a good one, especially also when it comes to cognitive function. I do think that sometimes bouts of like more intense and then giving yourself some rest is certainly a good way to go. It very much is going to depend on the individual. I don't think I can give you a rapid fire answer to that one.
Sure. Yeah. There's a curiosity. You don't have to have a rapid fire answer. Does the calendar come into play at all? Like, can people plan out like a Monday, Thursday, and a Friday? I'm going to do this, and a Tuesday. Is structure vital to succeeding in losing weight?
I think it's very, very, very helpful, because we're not so reliant on our mood in the moment or decision-making abilities in the moment. And as you and I both know, that's very unpredictable often, when we're like, oh, I don't feel like working out today, I'll do it tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes around, it was a busy day, I'll do it the next day. And so if we have that structure of like every Monday, Thursday, Saturday, I'm working out no matter what, it's in my books, it's like an appointment with myself, we're much more likely to actually hold ourselves accountable to that.
Last question for you. How can people get in touch either with you, or where can they go to get your products or education?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a blast, and I do hope that the listeners gain some value from it. And anyone who's listening, if you heard me on this show, I always enjoy just a small message, or even if you have any feedback, criticism for me, I truly enjoy it. So yeah, my company name is Nutrition Coaching and Life. You can find me under Nutrition Coaching and Life on Instagram, on YouTube, and also I have a podcast, which is the Nutrition and Life podcast. But yeah, drop me a message. There's some information about, of course, my one-on-one coaching as well. But also, I just try to give out some valuable information or content to consume for anybody, whether my client or not.
And your podcast, is it bi-weekly, monthly, weekly? And can you give the name of that once more, just so I can make sure I include it in those notes?
Yeah, the podcast is the Nutrition and Life podcast. I put out 2 episodes every week. I have some guests on as well, most of the time, some researchers, whether it comes to fat metabolism or muscle building or various supplements or any kind of hormone research. So yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It's truly been a pleasure.
Lisa, you've debunked many of the thoughts I had about my ability to lose weight. I thought I had to have my heart rate up for a certain amount of time and for a certain amount length of time. And I've tried it, and it was just impossible with my level of injury. Therefore, I was like, well, then you have to restrict eat. And I had found out today that it's not and or, it's both. It's a mindset, and exercising. So nothing is impossible, which gives me hope. And so I would like to revisit this maybe 6 months down the road and see what the new Swagability host looks like, as I'm very set on trying to live for longevity and for my family. So thank you so much for this. And do my wife and I the biggest favor. Would you share Swagability with someone that you know that could use help, whether that be physical, whether that be spiritual, emotional, or even financial? Let them know that Swagability is there. And our desire, as always, is to see you thrive wherever life finds you. Until next time, friends, swags.